It's loading.
So, but a lot of the beginning will be kind of like telling us how these meetings are orchestrated and the proper way of communicating. And are we going to go through that kind of, you know? Oh, we'll continue.
Jeanette, is school almost wrapping up?
Yep, we have 2 weeks left, I think.
And I don't know if things have changed from when I was in high school. I assume they have. Is finals the very last week of school, or are finals over, or how is that working?
Finals for the rest of, I guess, the school is still the last week of school, but since I'm a junior, so I have like AP tests and other things happening. They did it earlier.
Oh, got it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melvin Gaines, and I'm a principal analyst with the city manager's office. And I have the pleasure of starting off this inaugural meeting of the Public Safety Advisory Board. And I would like to call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the State of California Executive Order N-29-20, dated March 17th, 2020. All members of the Public Safety Advisory Board are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe this meeting live may do so on YouTube or through this webinar. If you would like to make a public comment during this period, you may do so either through the webinar by raising your hand or by dialing area code 669-900-9128 and entering webinar ID 937-9527-9092. Any emails that were received today by 4:30, I forwarded on to the members of the Public Safety Advisory Call. And with that, I'd like to begin this meeting with the roll call. I'll just call you by name and please let me know if you're present. Member IR.
Present.
Member Brodowski. She's here. Joan Brodowski. Here. Member Cleve Frank. Member Derek Langton.
Present.
Member Cal Sandhu.
Present.
Member Eva Tang.
Present.
Member Jeanette Wang.
Present.
All right. Member Cleve Frank is not present.
I think he is in the participants list, but he may not be a panelist. I think I see him in there.
All right, let's see if I can promote him. All right, we have him. Member Cleve Frank is here. Thank you for joining us. All right, so with that, I will move to item 3, oral communications from the public. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the subcommittee on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the Public Safety Advisory Board from acting on any non-agendized items. Would any member of the public like to speak or comment on an item that is not on the agenda? If so, please raise your hand and I will call you in. All right. So we've got 1, 2 raised hands, and we'll start with Tim Mckenzie.
Hi, all. My name is Tim Mckenzie. I've been a resident of Mountain View for going almost 6 years now. And I just want to sort of remind this advisory board of this. The creation happened was a little less than a year ago. It was just over a year ago. George Floyd was murdered by a police officer, and there was an outcry from the citizens of our city. That was asking for a reallocation of resources from the police department towards things that the services that our community needs. And in that time since then, there's also been several opportunities for community members to be engaged. And during that, youth members of our community have come forward repeatedly and shared some really terrible stories of their experiences with school resource officers, and have shared what sound like traumatic experiences, to the point that some students have been late to class because they wanted to avoid walking past the school resource officers. The city council briefly talked about this just on Tuesday, and said they didn't want to step on the toes of PSAB, but this is something that's come up quite frequently and a lot. And I think it's really important for this problem to really be addressed and looked at, whether that's by PSAB, whether that's by city council, whether that's in conjunction. I wouldn't presume to tell you how to do your work, but this is something that has been brought up repeatedly, and it seems like there's continual deflecting and trying to kick the can down the road. And it's something that's clear there's action that needs to be taken, and it's there are members of our community who have been harmed, and I would love to see some action taken with school resource officers, and clear signal from the Public Safety Advisory Board to the City Council that this needs to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mckenzie. Next speaker is Dana Peady.
Hi there. Thank you so much. Congratulations, everyone, new members of the Public Safety Advisory Board. My name is Dana Peady, and I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the Mountain View Coalition for Police Reform and Accountability, or MVCPRA for short. We've been watching the development of the PSAB with interest, and we're excited to see the kickoff of this important work to reimagine public safety here in Mountain View. Thanks, Tim, for your comments also. As you begin to develop the work plan, which might start tonight, one area that we're hoping you're going to look into is mental health first response. Even before the pandemic, nonviolent mental health crises have often been handled first and foremost by sworn police officers. In San Jose, or in the Santa Clara County, we know that the Mobile Crisis Response Team program has done a really great job of providing mental health care to people in crisis, but they mostly serve other areas of the county because we know their capacity is still really limited at this time. They're rarely able to support Mountain View residents due to long response times. We also know that the county has begun considering similar programs in other areas, specifically East and San Jose. I forgot what their acronyms are, but there's clearly a lot of momentum behind this idea, and we'd love for similar resources to be made available to our neighbors here in North County. This has always been an important issue, but recent times make it particularly critical that this is important. The pandemic has taken such a huge toll on the mental health of our community, especially for children, for unhoused residents, and for other vulnerable members of our community. So now's a really important opportunity to provide those folks experiencing nonviolent crises with fast, compassionate, and non-punitive care by highly trained mental health professionals. We also understand that you're probably going to be receiving direction from the City Council to review the SRO program. And we understand that your work on this has also not even begun yet, but we're hoping that it's going to include holistic and comprehensive outreach to students in which they feel comfortable sharing experiences honestly, confidentially, and without judgment or redirection. We hope to ensure that the services being provided for students are targeted and responsive to the challenges that they face and are delivered by expertly trained professionals in youth services. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing your work to improve public safety for everybody in our city. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Peady. The next speaker is Anna Marie Morales.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Marie. I want to start by congratulating everyone on their appointments to PSAB. I've lived in Mountain View for 40 years. I went to Mountain View schools. I went to Los Altos High School. It is really important for me that SROs, this is actually owned by either PSAB or City Council, and someone takes the time to do thorough feedback from the most impacted people on this. And I kind of want to just parrot what Tim and Dana both said about this and mental health. This is something that's really important to public safety in Mountain View. So I'm hoping that these items will be discussed, thoroughly studied, and you guys will use all the resources at your disposal to make a change and have public safety for everyone in Mountain View. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sebastian Brisb.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so my name is Sebastian Brisb, and I just wanted to mention that Black and Hispanic residents have more contact with police per the 2019 MVPD data. That's the most recent I've seen. And I think it's important to keep that in mind because, well, for example, Black residents are about 6 times as likely as white residents to be arrested, and Hispanic residents about 4 times as likely to be arrested if you run the numbers, do some math. And so, and this data has been similar previous years, so this doesn't seem to be an anomaly. And so this shows that there is systemic racism here in Mountain View, and it's not like utopia, unlike the rest of America that experiences this racism. So I think we'll continue to see the same statistics year after year unless there is systemic change. And I really think our Black and Hispanic neighbors deserve better than how they're currently treated. So I really hope that whatever conversation happens here, whatever is worked on, this reality is kept in mind, and hopefully the status quo is challenged, because the way public safety is in Mountain View is just simply not working for many residents. And also it's always good to get residents' input, but some may be busy, unable to attend these meetings and so on. So there's these numbers that demonstrate the disparities in treatment by race in Mountain View. So I hope this is something that we can see differences in Mountain View in a few years because of the work that's done here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brisbois. The next speaker is Alex Brown.
Hey all, can you hear me? I just wanted to say, to take this opportunity to say welcome to some of you. Welcome back to serving on a city committee. I'm very excited to see this take off, and I think that the PSAB has a lot of potential to do great things in the city. I also want to support all the previous speakers, especially my fellow MHA member and steering committee member. I think that I look forward to seeing what comes out of this body and hearing what we can do as a city to make Mountain View better for the people of Mountain View. And you know, seeing you guys on here in this Zoom room, I'm heartened. I think there's a chance we might be able to do something. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And seeing no more hands raised, I would like to close the public comment period. It's fun trying to time and facilitate and let people in and out. And with that, we will move on from item 3 to item 4.1, a Brown Act training that will be by our city attorney, Sandy Lee. Ms. Lee, you may take the floor.
Can I share my screen, Melvin? Or were you going to advance the slides?
You can share your screen.
Okay, great. There we go. Can everyone see that? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandy Lee. I'm a senior assistant city attorney in the city attorney's office. And welcome to your first meeting as the newest advisory board for the city of Mountain View. As you embark on your new role, we wanted to provide an overview of the open meetings laws that applies to all of our city's boards and commissions, as well as the city council. So let's get started. There we go. There we go. Okay. So the Brown Act is the open meeting law of the state of California, and it applies to local agencies like the city of Mountain View. It has, it advanced, sorry. It has been around for a very long time. It was enacted in 1953 after a period when there were scandals, and then followed with scrutiny over the longstanding practice of government meetings being held behind closed doors in smoke-filled rooms outside the view of the public. So the purpose and intent of the Brown Act is to ensure that deliberations and actions of local legislative bodies are open to the public, and that the public has meaningful access to local agency decision-making. And therefore, meetings must be open, held on a regular schedule, and follow a noticed agenda. So the Brown Act's overarching statement is that all meetings of the legislative body, and you'll see those are the keywords, of a local agency shall be open and public, and all persons shall be permitted to attend any meeting of the legislative body of the agency. So the Brown Act's rules apply specifically to meetings of legislative bodies. So what is a legislative body? The Brown Act applies to the city council, of course, is our governing legislative body, but it also applies to bodies that are formed by the city through a formal action. And that includes the PSAB, which was formed by formal action of the city council, and all members were appointed by the city council. The Brown Act's rules apply to meetings. This is the definition of a meeting under the Brown Act. It's a congregation of a majority of the body, and for this body, that would be 4 members, at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate on items within your subject matter jurisdiction. And here that would be public safety. So this, and I would note that same time and place is not limited to those circumstances when you're all together in one room at the same time. A meeting might occur through a series of communications involving a majority of the body, and that would constitute a violation of the Brown Act. A serial meeting is a series of communications that ultimately involve a majority to discuss, deliberate, or take action on an issue within the body's subject matter jurisdiction. There are 2 typical or traditional ways that an unlawful serial meeting might occur. One is referred to as the daisy chain. And this is an example where, member A contacts member B, who then contacts member C, who then contacts member D, so on until a quorum has discussed a subject outside of a noticed public meeting. The other typical serial meeting is called the hub and spoke, and this is sort of like a bicycle wheel, where there is one person in common who speaks to various members, and that ultimately involves a majority of the body. And the most common way this might occur, and which you need to be cautious about, as do all bodies that are subject to the Brown Act, is through email. So a couple of good practices to avoid serial meetings through email is that members of the body should send communications to the staff liaison. So Mr. Gaines should be your primary contact rather than emailing your fellow board members. Please work through your staff liaison. And then be cautious when forwarding or replying all to emails and in the use of social media. So the rise of social media has created a lot more potential opportunities and risks for Brown Act violations. And there was a lot of confusion about what was permissible in the use of social media. And I would still say there is a good amount of confusion still. But if a majority of the legislative body was engaged in a discussion on social media, on the one hand, it appears open and public, but it would not have occurred at a noticed public meeting following the rules of the Brown Act. So even though it may appear transparent, it still is not compliant with state law if a majority engages in a discussion on social media. So last year, the legislature finally provided some guidance through AB 992, and they provided some clarification on what might be allowed on social media. So members may communicate on social media platforms to answer questions, provide information to the public, or to solicit information from the public on a matter within your subject matter jurisdiction. This is only allowed as long as a majority of the members don't use the social media platform to discuss among themselves official business. A member may not respond directly to a communication of another member of the same body on social media on a matter within your subject matter jurisdiction. So this is actually a broader prohibition on social media than applies in face-to-face communications, because typically two members can speak to each other. In a body of this size with 7 members, 3 can speak together on public safety issues, and it wouldn't constitute a Brown Act violation because it's less than a majority. But the rules on social media are a bit more strict at this point. I think it's still an evolving area of the law, but it is something to be cautious about. So, and these allowances in AB 992 assume that this activity is occurring on an open and accessible social media platform. I don't know. Okay. So when is a meeting not a meeting under the Brown Act? So what types of congregations of a majority are permissible under the Brown Act? First of all, there's what's called the individual contact exception, and that is a conversation between a member of the legislative body and any other person. So 2 people talking, that's not a meeting. They could become a serial meeting if 2 people talk and then one of them talks to another and then they talk to another. But 2 members speaking, or you as a member speaking to a member of the public, one other person, that's not a meeting. There's also an exception for conferences and seminars that are open to the public. So if you attended a League of California Cities conference that is, open to the public and on a matter of general interest to cities, that would be permissible even if the entire membership went to that conference. so long as you didn't discuss city business or PSAB business at that meeting. The same is true of community meetings, and those are community meetings that are also open to the public. They're open and publicized, and they're meetings that are not held by the city. So, you know, a neighborhood association that holds a meeting that is open to the general public as well. A majority could attend that as long as you don't discuss PSAB business at that meeting amongst yourselves. So unless it's part of a notice program. So if you were at a conference and presenting about, you know, how in a year, if you're presenting on how the Mountain View approached public safety, that would be permissible even if it involved a majority. But other than that, can't discuss city related business at these various gatherings. So the same exception applies for social or ceremonial events, so long as a majority doesn't discuss board business at the event. And you may also attend meetings of another legislative body. A majority can attend. And we don't have standing committees, so I'm going to skip that. Okay, so there are 3 types of meetings. Regular, special, and adjourned. Most importantly, are the regular meetings are those that are on your established schedule at the established date and time. And agendas have to be posted 72 hours in advance. They have to contain a brief description of what you will be discussing or acting upon. And this agenda must be freely accessible to the public. And at all regular meetings, you must have a general comment period for the public. So not only is there, and we had our general comment period before this part of the meeting started. So in addition to having public comment for each item of business, there must be a general comment period for items that are not on the agenda. So there is a distinction in the Brown Act for special meetings, and these are usually called on a shorter time frame. But in Mountain View, typically, and I suspect this will be true for your body, when we have special meetings, it's usually because the meeting is starting at a slightly different time than would typically. And so if your regular meeting time is 7 p.m. and you start at 6 p.m., that's a special meeting. And so we generally follow all the rules for regular meetings, even for what we call special meetings. So we do post agendas further in advance than 24 hours, and we do have a general public comment period. Gonna skip that. Okay, so public comment is another key feature of a Brown Act meeting. And the public can speak about any matter within the body's subject matter jurisdiction. So your agenda will likely list several topics for discussion at any meeting. You are confined to speak to those topics at the meetings, but the public during the general comment period can bring up anything that's related to public safety. They might bring up things that they want you to think about for a future meeting. Or they might talk about something you've spoken about before. The public is entitled to a more broad scope of comment at meetings than members of the body are. So the public comment must be allowed before or during consideration of an item. This might seem obvious that you can't wait until after you voted on a matter before public comment is allowed. So the public speaks before the body takes action or closes out the item. There are rules of decorum that are allowed, and time limits on public comment are permissible, as we have been using here. Speakers generally should speak through the chair. And what I mean by that is that they shouldn't address individual members of the board or staff or each other. It's just a recipe for a meeting getting a little out of hand. So, typically you might have heard people say through the chair. Obviously you don't have to use those words, but address the chair in general. Comments should be germane to the scope of the work of the body. And I would note, while disruptive speakers can be ejected from a meeting, they have to be causing an actual disruption to allow for that very extreme remedy. So. There's a little bit of a delay. Okay. So this is another important point, and it kind of goes back to the other key feature of the Brown Act meeting is that you have to have an agenda that briefly describes what you're going to be discussing or acting upon. So you cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda, with some very, very limited exceptions. I think the first item, that will not come up in the context of this advisory body. It almost never comes up even in the context of the city council. So more typically, members of the board can provide a brief response to comments or questions that come up from the public, with the emphasis on brief. There shouldn't be a 5-minute discussion that ensues from a comment that a member of the public made. You can also ask for clarifications or refer a matter to staff. You may also make brief announcements or report on activities that are related to your scope of work. And members can ask that items be placed on future agendas. So Brown Act violations can result in civil actions, lawsuits, or criminal prosecution in very extreme circumstances. But I think the more kind of real world consequence of violations of the Brown Act is really an erosion of public trust, and a kind of loss of reputation of the agency and the body. And you do, because before someone files an action notice and an opportunity to cure the violation must be provided. This is less typical that there would be litigation that ensues, but it's the kind of reputational harm, I think, that is the more common consequence. And I made it all the way through. I didn't know if Melvin wanted or if we have time. We may not have time, but I also wanted to just note there are a couple of resources that are in the PowerPoint that it has been posted to your agenda. And I also wanted to let you know that if you do have questions after this meeting, you're welcome to contact me at the city attorney's office through Mr. Gaines, and I'm happy to help clarify any other issues related to the Brown Act.
Ms. Lee, as a point of clarification, it's okay for PSAB members to ask questions now ahead of public comment opening, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So members, if you'd like to ask any questions, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you. I'm seeing Derek's hand now. Derek, go for it.
So on matters that I find, like, let's say I read an article about community policing or actions that another government has taken that they've seen a reduction in recidivism or whatever, and I wanted to share that with the rest of the board, I would send that to Melvin.
Yes.
Okay. So if I, like, I'm out hiking, I I'm reading an article, I find it might be pertinent to Mountain View, and I'd like to potentially discuss it, yeah, like in public, like would this method work for Mountain View PD? Yeah, I could raise that to Melvin, and then we might put it on an agenda.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about your agenda setting process, and I think maybe Melvin and the rest of you will discuss that later in the meeting. However, but your specific example, what I would do is send that information to Melvin, and he may be compiling that information. It would also be shared with the public. So whatever all of the board members receive, it would be posted to be available to the public. So they would know all the information that you're considering.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Member Brodowski.
Yes, I don't know if this is appropriate. I want to talk about something I think should be agendized in the future, and I can talk about that at a later time or at another meeting. I just skipped over when we were taking comments.
I don't know if there's a portion of the agenda, Melvin, you might want to speak to it, where members can speak to items, suggestions for later agendas.
Yes, during on this agenda particularly, there is item 5 is board staff comments, questions, and reports, and that is where you can propose a comment and make a suggestion for a future meeting.
Okay, I can wait until then. Thank you.
You're welcome. Member Sandhu?
More of a comment than a question. Just a couple of things I want to say. I did experience a almost Brown Act violation when we had a party here at our house years ago, and a lot of people were invited. We literally had to not allow one city member, council member, to come in because he wanted to come in. We said, no, you can't. There are already 3 city council members. Come back in 2 hours. So that worked. And then the other comment is, I would tell all the members of this lovely board that the staff members, in all my experience, 9 years on the HRC, they've always been very, very resourceful. Anything you need, just reach out to them. It just makes it easy for you and protects you too at the same time. And they are very efficient. Just my 2 cents, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any additional questions for Ms. Lee? All right, and with that, I will.
Actually, that's Jeanette, I think, who wants to say something.
Yes, sorry, I have just a clarification. So if I wanted to kind of gain perspective through using social media, that's okay, as long as I don't like respond to anyone else's stuff on social media. Okay,
Right.
cool. Thank you.
Do any other members have comments or questions related to this item? Seeing none, I will see if there are any members of the public who have comments. Seeing none. So thank you very much, Ms. Lee. We appreciate the Brown Act training. You know, it's super useful and relevant, obviously, as we are embarking on this new advisory board, and you know, mostly new commissioners. Some of our members have experience serving other Mountain View commissions, and others are brand new. So thank you very much. And with that, I will move on to item 4.2, discussion of the City Council Advisory Bodies Handbook. I will provide a short presentation on some of the key points from the Advisory Body Handbook that I thought helps us to establish a tone for what the expectations are for the Public Safety Advisory Board as a body, as well as what the expectations are for Public Safety Advisory Board members, and what the expectations are for Public Safety Advisory Board staff liaisons, myself and Captain Canfield. I'd also like this to provide the opportunity for everyone to introduce yourselves a bit, and I'll let you know when. And with that, to kind of establish some group norms of things that we believe would be useful for us as a body, as far as working styles and communication styles, and things that would help this body function effectively as far as how we interact with one another, both during these public meetings as well as if you meet outside of a public meeting in a non-Brown Act violation type of way. So with that, I will begin my presentation. I'm going to share my screen.
Hey, Melvin, real quick. There's no restriction on us meeting you, right?
No, there is not.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right. So again, the agenda packet includes a full copy of the Council Advisory Body's handbook, but I highlighted a few things from the Council Advisory Body's handbook that I think I wanted to make sure that everyone was able to see. Beginning with the roles of advisory bodies and commissions and committees. Ultimately, City Council advisory bodies assist the City Council to make policy decisions. However, advisory bodies do not set or establish city policy. You also don't independently provide direction to city staff. That the City Council sets policy direction, and they direct the council hires, the city manager, and the city attorney, the city clerk, and the mass majority of the rest of us city staff members are under the direction of the city manager or their designees, various different department heads or managers. This specific board, the Public Safety Advisory Board, is tasked with providing the City Council, the city manager, and the police chief with community-informed input and recommendations on public safety matters. This body also serves as a forum for public discussion for members of the public to raise concerns or to voice questions about public safety matters, as well as to discuss things such as community policing, Mountain View Police Department's engagement efforts, the transparency of Mountain View Police Department, and helping the city to establish best practices related to public safety. You also act as a liaison between the community and the police department. The PSAB members are expected to provide input to this community, to the city that is informed by the community, and help the city to better serve the community through having greater knowledge of community interest and community concerns. The staff liaisons, myself, Melvin Gaines, I am the principal management analyst in the city manager's office, and I am serving this board as the lead staff liaison. And I have a second liaison, Captain Canfield, has also joined us, and he's in the police department, but he's also here to serve as a liaison. And collectively, we will work with the vice chair and the chair to set agendas, and then we will do the legwork of actually preparing the agenda and publishing the agenda, as well as the meeting minutes and other general business relating to the board, whether that be preparing presentations or reports, etc. As far as kind of guidelines and responsibilities for you as a council appointed advisory body member, there are kind of two core things that all members are expected. One is being present at meetings. If you fail to be present and are absent for 3 unexcused meetings, consecutive meetings, you may be removed from the body by a city council. We also, there's an expectation that members of the advisory body as agents of the city are moral. If a board member is convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude, their office will become vacant and subject to a reappointment by the city council. Considering how you may interact with the public, you may do so somewhat freely. Members of city boards, commissions, and committees are representatives of the city of Mountain View. However, you're allowed to have your individual opinions, but it's important that you are clear when you're making comments whether you're making that comment as a representative of the Public Safety Advisory Board and the City of Mountain View, meaning that this comment reflects a collective decision of the Public Safety Advisory Board. Furthermore, that the City Council agreed with that opinion, or if you're making that as yourself as an individual. As far as your relationship, the relationship between a advisory board member and the City Council, as I mentioned earlier, the City Council appoints advisory boards. You all as members were appointed to help the council to fulfill their goals and vision and objectives for the community. But you may still have opinions that are divergent to those of the City Council. Your recommendations as a Public Safety Advisory Board are advisory to the City Council. The council values the input of the PSAB and all other advisory bodies, but there are times when the City Council may not accept the recommendation or may decide to do something different than what the advisory body recommended. And of course, any final city position that you're going to communicate should definitely be that has been absorbed and enhanced and endorsed by the City Council prior to stating that this is an opinion of the City Council should endorse that. As far as access to information, Captain Canfield and I are here to serve you. We're here to provide you with information that you may request to an extent, as long as we can do it within our capacity, and it's not going to involve a great level of time beyond our regular kind of responsibilities, then we can fulfill that request. But a request that is greater than Captain Canfield or I is able to typically do, and we'd have to kind of make that request to the City Council or to the City Manager prior to it being fulfilled by Captain Canfield or myself. As a general rule, board members are allowed to have subcommittees. You cannot take on a life of your own as a subcommittee. 3 of the 7 of you can form a subcommittee, and you can take on a particular project, but you can't really set the clear policy for that. You can bring it back to the entire Public Safety Advisory Board to adopt that recommendation, but you're allowed to do that. However, you're not allowed to independently use PSAB resources, monies, and things of that matter without the full board authorizing it. If the board identifies a particular focus it would like to pursue that requires expenditure of time or effort not contemplated during the budgetary cycle, that request needs to be forwarded to the City Council for approval. And with that, I did mention that I wanted to discuss group agreements. Again, these are things that will help us function well as a board. There are 7 different Public Safety Advisory Board members. You all bring different experiences, you have different backgrounds, and you have different styles. So I wanted to take some time today. First, I'd like to ask you guys if you have any questions from what I presented, but then I'd like to discuss these group agreements. And really just establish some agreements that would help the PSAB operate effectively. Examples of agreements could be that we speak respectfully about ourselves and other people, or that we listen for understanding, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Or a group agreement can be that you value multiple perspectives. There are various different group agreements that we may have, and I would like you all to offer some. And with that, just thinking what is a group agreement you would like to offer? And you might want to think about what things will make this group work well for you, or what makes this a safe and respectful place for us to work in. But before we discuss those agreements though, I want to give you all the opportunity to ask any questions you may have about the Council Advisory Handbook that I just presented. Member IR.
Thank you. I noticed that that you called Joan Brodowski Member Brodowski. So I just wanted to confirm that would be an appropriate way to address each other, and whether you yourself and Captain Can are also members, or do you have different titles?
I call you all a member because that's what I figured was a great way to start and be respectful initially, but you all have the liberty to say if you want me to reference you otherwise. Myself, I'm happy with Melvin. I'm happy with Mr. Gaines. I'm happy with those two things. And Captain Canfield, again, I'm being formal, but once we get a feel for each other and maybe people want to be called by their first name, then we may do so. It's you all set the tone for that.
Okay, thank you.
Member Langton.
So yeah, with regards to addressing people, I don't know if that's something, yeah, we're talking about now, or I will admit I'm definitely a little more of Derek works for me. You know, I've been called Trooper Langton before, and yeah, I wasn't necessarily thrilled with official titles, but I'm willing to go with whatever the group as a whole kind of would like to, you know, in addressing each other, whatever they feel.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question before we begin discussing group agreements? Although with kind of what we prefer to call each other is kind of getting into that as well. All right, seeing no hands, I would like to discuss group agreements. And I'd like to do this in a way where we give you all the opportunity to introduce yourselves, your name, and maybe tell us something about yourself, and then talk about group agreements. What is a group agreement you would like to offer?
Staff Melvin, are you going to call each person at a time, or?
Yeah, I didn't want to just cold call you, but if you, does anyone like to volunteer? Otherwise,
I will, since I'm already on there. Well, my name is Calwant Sandhu. Everyone calls me Cal for short. Sometimes I use my middle name Singh. Depends on who can call me by my first name. It doesn't matter, as long as it's respectful. And I try to be respectful. I'm respectful of everyone else too. So I'm originally from Singapore. Been here for 40 years. Served, went to University of San Francisco on a soccer scholarship, and then I went to University of Phoenix, did various things. Didn't get jobs because I was wearing a turban, but that's the past. I moved forward. So now, I served on the, like I mentioned earlier, Human Relations Commission. We also literally address each other by first name, even the staff member, but I know that whenever things got a little testy, people started to use the name like Commissioner Sandhu, so it became a bit more formal. So, hopefully we don't have to do that, but if either way, it's fine with me. That's my 2 cents for that. I am a businessman. I am a mentor. I teach young entrepreneurs around the world. I'm a professional youth soccer player. A coach. I just came back from coaching 70 girls in Palo Alto at PSV Union Football Club, and one of my businesses is life insurance and fixed income annuities. So those are the things I do. I like to keep busy. I've told people I've never retired because I will look silly in golf pants, and I don't like boring games. So I like to keep myself busy. That's one reason why I volunteered to come back after a hiatus of 9 years, 8-9 years, when I was termed out in 2012 from the HRC. So I hope, I know this is a great bunch, and I could already sense it. We can bring a lot of positiveness into our community. So that's what my input is. I'll leave it to someone else to take the microphone now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Sandhu. What was your group agreement? Was it just to be respectful? Was that what I heard?
Oh yes, be respectful, courteous. Just put in somebody else's shoes. I've always said this to even young kids that you have two eyes, so look before you do anything. You have two ears, listen two times as much. You got two nostrils, breathe in, breathe out as much, but you got one mouth, so use your brain before you open your mouth. So that averts a lot of problems. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Member Brodowski, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I thought I'd introduce myself. I'm Joan Brodowski. I'm professionally a chemist and a physiologist. Can you hear me? Because one person complained that my voice was very soft.
We can hear you, yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. I've lived in Mountain View for off and on for the last 10 years, or a little bit more. And I spent most of my working life in Mexico City, so I'm bilingual. I think that one of the reasons people wanted me here was because they thought I might be Latina, and I have one foot in the Latin community. So I'm interested in this because I was alarmed I'm interested in this group because I was alarmed at the George Floyd upset a year ago. I worry that any of the problems that people are complaining about could apply here. And that's the reason I stuck my neck out. As for addressing, I'm happy with being called Joan or Ms. or Mrs. Brodowski, and that whatever is decided here. I'm uncomfortable with something like committee member or council member. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And did you have a group agreement you'd like to offer?
A group agreement. You were asking about how to address ourselves, or was there something I missed?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was also to know whether or not there was something you would offer that would make this group work well for you, and help make this a safe and respectful place for us to work in.
I think that if we follow rules, normal rules of courtesy, I think we'll do fine.
Thank you. Member IR.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Thank you, Melvin. Just wanted to say I'm happy to be here. My name is Kavita Iyer. I live in the Cuesta Park neighborhood. I've lived in Cuesta Park in Mountain View for about 15 years. I moved here from Germany, where I worked for, almost 7 years. Met my husband there, and we moved back here together. I'm originally an immigrant from India, but did go to school and college in the U.S. I'm here because I believe communities can evolve, and I believe community policing can evolve, and I'm excited about the possibilities. And so I'd like to, and I wanted to be part of it, and that's why I put my threw my hat in the ring to potentially be on here. In terms of group agreements, for me, it's I think it's just an awareness of the space that you're occupying and the space you're taking up, and making sure there's room for other folks. I think everyone's voice is really important to hear. And it helps when you yourself are aware of the space that you're taking up. And secondly, I would really encourage everyone to do the work, right? So I don't think the work just happens in these meetings, in these regular or special meetings, but I think there might be work. I don't just think, I know there is work to be done in terms of meeting with members of the community, meeting with some, I think one of our public commenters talked about students and SROs, talking to the school board there, talking to police officers, right? That I just hope that that folks are willing to do the work to really understand the overall context of a situation and not just limiting it to our time here. And I'm fine being called Kavita. I don't need to be addressed as member. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. Would anyone else like to go? Everyone will go. Yes, Member Wang.
Hello, I'm Jeanette Wang, and I'm a junior at Los Altos High School. And I decided to, apply to be part of this council because I think it's very important to be involved and to have a, have a voice at the table, especially as a young person. I am also a police explorer at the Mountain View Police Department, and I think some of my experiences there could be helpful or beneficial as part of the conversation. I'm fine with being called Jeanette. And I think one of the group agreements that I think could be helpful is to be open to new and a variety of platforms of communication. And I think that might help us reach out to a wider variety of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to volunteer to go next? Or Member Langton. Trooper Langton.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I'm happy with Derek. I'll second or third that we don't necessarily need titles. But again, whatever everybody agrees upon. I think we could all, some of us might want to be called he, him, or they, or whatever. To me, it's more just what each person really, I'd like to identify each member by what they feel most comfortable with. As far as my background, I've done all kinds of things like driving tractor trailers. I spent 20 years as a Massachusetts state police officer in a variety of roles, from anywhere giving kids driver license tests to being a backup police department for small municipalities that didn't have any police officers, being like, that they probably had like one chief or something. I've worked in large cities, and I've even was involved and when the state police came in and took over our local town Spencer Police Department because the city board decided that the whole department was too corrupt and they wanted to re-establish it and bring in new members. And so I've seen, a lot of different things involving law enforcement. And I don't think we're going to have anyone take over Mountain View Police Department, but I have seen agencies that have gone through transitions. I think I bring a good perspective as far as a larger department and kind of the biases that were basically trained in me through modeling, that I honestly always took offense to, and tried not to copycat those behaviors when I felt that they were wrong. I've been out in California for since 2011. I moved here with my husband. I met him in Boston, but he's a Saratoga resident. I grew up in Saratoga, went to MIT. He was an ex-Googler. He started back in 2003. I was exposed to the Silicon Valley culture while we did a long distance relationship, going to Google Christmas parties and seeing all these people that thought more collegiate-like or collaboratively. Whereas, where I work, they were like, you make the decision right, and you follow it through. And it was amazing to come out and see this other world that I felt like I was living in a fantasy land. And so I look forward to bringing all my experiences and, my interactions with people in Silicon Valley and Mountain View. I even volunteer at the CSA at the food bank. And yeah, I've enjoyed contributing to the community. I guess that's about it.
And did you have a group agreement to?
I really feel like the group's pretty diverse and honest and genuine, and I really value the diversity of it. And yeah, I don't. Yeah, to me, it seems like it should go pretty well. We seem very respectful for each other. Again, I think the only agreement I have is, call each other by whatever makes us comfortable.
All right, thank you. Member Tang, I noticed your hand raised.
Thank you. My name is Eva Tang. I am someone who grew up in the Bay Area, not too far from here, in Santa Clara. It's very different now than it was before, similar to Mountain View's evolution. I am a science teacher at a high school in East Palo Alto. And let's see, I might have a little trouble with the lack of formality because not only was I a student in the California Youth and Government Program, I was an advisor for the California Youth and Government Program, which is a kind of mock state government that students go to Sacramento and model their own state government. So if I call you something more formal than you are comfortable with, I'm sorry. I might need some training with that. Whatever you would like to call me is fine. But please remember that my first name is pronounced Eva, not Eva. And I'm here because I was also distraught at the murder of George Floyd and also Breonna Taylor and countless others starting last year. And I am the type of person to do something about it rather than sit around and not do something about it. And that's me. Oh, group agreement. I'm seconding everyone's group agreements. Rephrasing in teacher world that of the ground norm that Kavita had proposed is make space and take space. It's a cute way of saying that. And that's me.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Frink.
Hey, I'm Cleve Frink. I don't have a preference for addressing. If the group would like to be more formal, that's fine with me. Less formal is fine as well. I've done both on previous boards. I've spent most of my time serving the school district here. I've co-chaired the last two bond and parcel tax measures for this district. And I've sat on several very difficult task forces for them, including all three boundaries conversations in the past 6 or 7 years. In the past, I've written voting districts for a city of about 700,000 people, and done a lot of other advocacy work. In most of my life, I spent a lot of time working with police departments through Neighborhood Watch and other crime prevention programs. As I mentioned earlier, my father and I had an opportunity to discuss with the city on how he created one of the earliest versions of this kind of board in the 70s. And my father passed away about 10 days ago. And so before he got a chance to see this meeting, and so it's just an honor to participate in this. And I thank the city for their kindness in their discussions with him. I am a filmmaker and a content producer by profession. And I've lived in Mountain View for about 8 years now. I have one teenage son and one grown 27-year-old son. My kids, my younger son has attended Mountain View schools and is currently at Mountain View. And I'm an AAU youth basketball coach. And so I see a lot of the kids who benefit from the work that a board like this can do. The thing that I would like for us, I think it's a couple things that I would like for us to consider, and one of which is to remember that the problems and the solutions we're seeking and the things that we're trying to improve in this city are unique to our city and not the problems that we see on TV faced in other governments and in other cities around the country. We don't have the same problems that other police departments have, and we shouldn't try to create those issues here so that we can then solve them. I'd like for us to focus on the things that our community needs and not things that we don't. And the other thing is that these are issues that are fraught with personal experience, my own among them, and they are emotional. And I would like for us to remember that we may not all agree on solutions and pathways to these things, but that doesn't mean that we can't respect each other's opinions or our thoughts about how to approach these issues. So I would like for us to keep those things in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just want to offer that I was one of the staff members who got to meet with Mr. Frank Sr. and making our recommendations to the City Council. And we're initially to the Race, Equity, and Inclusion ad hoc subcommittee, and then to the City Council. We explored various different models of public oversight of public safety. And part of that was having discussions with different people who were operating different models. And we got to speak with Mr. Frank, who, like Cleve Jr., I believe is what he mentioned. We got to speak with his father and had a robust conversation for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And he was just telling us about all of the ways that the model of public oversight was used in Melbourne, Florida, as well as many other communities where it was built to make personal to those different communities, but that model was implemented in various different communities. And ultimately that informed our recommendation to form this body. So your father's guidance was very useful. And again, it informed the formation of this committee. And I think that this Public Safety Advisory Board, although different from what went on in Melbourne, will have his hands kind of sprinkled into it. So thank you for offering your father, and condolences to you. And thank you for being here. With that, I do want to give my colleague and my co-liaison opportunity to say something so that I don't have to continue talking. And he's actually going to present next, but before we get to that item, Captain Canfield, would you like to say anything?
Absolutely. Board, people watching, I'm Mike Canfield. I'm a police captain here at the Mountain View Police Department. I've been here for a little over 22 years. Currently, I oversee all of our field operations division, which in short means everybody in a uniform is under my my purview. There's 2 captains. One runs support operations, the other runs field operations. I have a fairly robust background in investigations and in patrol work. Really looking forward to the creation of this board and being able to serve the board with Melvin to provide any information and insight that you may have. I expect that there'll be a lot of questions and data about data and process and culture, and I will be providing that to you at the best of my ability, and looking forward to the time to come.
Thank you, Captain Canfield. And with that, I would like to see if any members of the public would like to speak on this item, the Council Advisory Body's Handbook. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. We have one speaker, Jim Salzman. We're going to limit it to 1.5 minutes because we're progressing through this meeting and we want to end at 9 o'clock. Jim Salzman.
Melvin, he doesn't have a mic or camera. He typed his question in the chat.
All right, I will read his question or comment. As a member of the public and on a system without a mic or a camera at the moment, sorry, may I please ask a general question? Do you plan to propose specific ordinances or policies for the City Council or Public Safety Department to adopt? I personally have, after having just lived through a profound homelessness crisis and population spike, which might likely be tiny compared to the eviction moratorium at the end of next month. Would like to see homelessness outreach expanded from police to fire department personnel, especially while the 100% reimbursement FEMA executive order of 27 January is still in effect. Thank you for the comment, Mr. Salzman. That is noted. We aren't allowed to respond to that item necessarily. It's not necessarily on the agenda, or it's not related to this item, but you will hear later about how the Public Safety Advisory Board will set forth its work plan and how that impacts recommendations to the City Council. Are there any other comments from the public? Mr. Tim Mckenzie.
Great to meet you all. I'm looking forward to, I'll be attending most of these meetings. I'm looking forward to seeing the work that y'all get together and do. I know a couple of you from MVPDX. It was great working with you. Had some really nice conversations, and I'm looking forward to seeing the work in the board. Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Mckenzie.
Melvin, you ended up muted.
Thank you. Would any other members of the public like to make a comment on this item? Seeing none, I would like to move on to item 4.3, the Public Safety Advisory Board work plan process, and Captain Michael Canfield will provide a presentation or a discussion.
Mike Canfield, please, Captain. The board has received a memorandum detailing the work plan process and providing an overview of City Council Policy A23, but staff would like to review the process with the board. City Council Policy A23 requires that the Public Safety Advisory Board, like all advisory bodies, provide a work plan to City Council for review and approval. The process of determining the work plan is normally done during the summer months and submitted to City Council in September. That being said, staff proposes that the Public Safety Advisory Board discuss your work plan items during the next 2 months, June and July. To inform your discussion, staff will provide the board with updates on work already done by the Human Relations Commission's ad hoc subcommittee on race, equity, and inclusion, often referred to as the HRC and the REI. There are the following topics have been prioritized by City Council and the REI as areas of importance. In no particular order, the 4 topics are Mountain View Police Department's racial stop data, alternative responses to mental health incidents, community input from the HRC listening forums on local policing, and the Mountain View Police Department School Resource Officer Program. It's important to note that the City Council would like to hear from the PSAB and conduct their own study session on the issue of the school resource officers before the end of this year. And it's important for you as a board to understand that due to staff's focus on COVID-19 recovery efforts, City Council has a desire to limit the number of work plan items for the next fiscal year. Once the Public Safety Advisory Board has identified your potential work plan items, staff will review the proposal and provide input to the Public Safety Advisory Board on the required staff work and the impact to execute the proposed work plan. Staff will make this input to the board during the August 21 meeting, where the PSAB can determine its proposed work plan. As a reminder, this work plan will be provided to City Council in September for their approval. So just as a general recap, June and July are spent determining what issues the PSAB would like to have proposed for a work plan. In August, staff will review and advise the PSAB on our capacity to provide the required information. And then in August as well, you'll approve as a board, and then that information will go to City Council in September for their approval. Thank you, Cleve.
Thank you, Captain Canfield. Do any PSAB members have any questions for Captain Canfield or myself? Let's start with Eva, Miss Tang.
Captain, could you just please repeat the 4 topics that were brought up?
Absolutely, Eva. The 4 topics are Mountain View Police Department's racial traffic stop data, alternative responses to mental health incidents, community input from the HRC listening forums on local policing, and the Mountain View Police Department's School Resource Officer Program. The last having the only time constraint.
What was the third one?
Community input from the HRC's listening forum on local policing.
Kavita has a hand raised.
Captain Canfield, could you go into more detail about the time constraints on the SRO part? And then what period of time does the workflow plan cover?
So the City Council would like to have their own council meeting or have their own study session regarding the School Resource Officer Program. And that was, the request was to have that or they would like to have that by the end of the year. Okay. So the only timeline for those 4 general topics, if that is what you propose, will be for the ability for your board or our board to complete its work on a School Resource Officer Program prior to the council session.
And thank you, Captain Canfield. And you asked what the time period is for the work plan. The work plans mirror the fiscal year. So the work plan that you submit to the City Council for approval with the rest of the advisory body boards would be approved in September. Mm-hmm. That would cover the following fiscal year. So essentially July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Derek?
Captain Canfield or Mike, or whatever, you had these topics that the City Council once discussed. And so we would obviously, would naturally just be adopted as our work plan. And can we add to that? Is that how? I don't know if it's to Mike or to Melvin or.
Maybe I'll start and then Melvin will fix whatever I mess up. It's not what you're required to adopt as your work plan. I think there's a request for you to review those issues, perhaps even an expectation, certainly on the School Resource Officer issue that was specifically addressed. But ultimately, I believe the request to City Council for your work plan is yours to make. However, I think these are the areas of previous work and discussion by the HRC as well as by City Council.
Okay, so but we could come up with other topics. We could adopt that and add to it.
That's correct.
Jeanette?
Yes, thank you. Just for clarification, when it says City Council would like to discuss it by the end of the year, do they mean the end of the year, like December, or like the end of the fiscal year, which you just mentioned was in June?
Sure, I'll take that one. So this was just recently discussed on Tuesday, and the City Council would like to discuss the topic of school resource officers by the end of this calendar year. Whether or not that means that this body, the PSAB, has to be done with whatever you all propose to do is somewhat independent of that. But ideally, what this body is able to do would help inform the City Council's discussion. So ideally, we, as a PSAB, will be able to consider things and address this issue to an extent that was able to help the City Council further discuss it by December of this year. Cal.
Yes, hi Melvin. Just to echo what Captain Michael had said earlier and what you were saying, um, when we did the work plan for the HRC, basically we advised and recommended that every member of the commission bring as many ideas as possible. And then we categorize them and then we decide what exactly our priorities are in conjunction with some of the recommendations of the city council. And that way we can have a solid work plan and work on it throughout. And so I would highly recommend that whatever ideas, ideas, projects you have, bring it to the table. And that makes it a good work plan. Otherwise, we are just picking and choosing. If you bring anything you have, no idea is a bad idea, and then we get together, put our heads together, and create the work plan. And if we veer off, I know Melvin and Michael will help us get back to the center. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek, did you have an additional comment, or is your hand?
Yeah, just one more. So as far as the school resource officer issue, even though we don't have a work plan for this current fiscal year, what we can basically put forward through you an agenda item that we want to discuss school resource officers, in next month's or the months afterwards meeting. How does stuff that doesn't have a work plan factor into trying to get it accomplished before the end of the year?
Sorry, could you clarify that for me?
So it sounds like the city council would like us to at least talk about school resource officers before the end of the calendar year. Is that correct?
Yes. And so because the city council has essentially referred the topic of school resource officers and said that they'd like the Public Safety Advisory Board to discuss that, we can discuss what we're going to do without it being approved by the council. They've already authorized this body to begin working on that topic. The remainder of the topics would be things that we propose in our work plan, and Captain Canfield and I would evaluate the staff resources that would be necessary to fulfill those, and make a recommendation to you all, and then you'd submit that work plan to the city council.
Okay, so it's not like there's an additional formal process we need to be able to talk about school resource officers. The fact that the city council referred it kind of makes it an agenda item that we can talk about this year.
Correct. Likely what will happen is after this meeting, when you all have a chair appointed and a vice chair, Captain Canfield and I will get together with the chair and vice chair to discuss the agenda for the next meeting. And it's quite possible that we'll begin discussing school resource officers at the next meeting.
Okay.
Cal.
Sorry about that. I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. So if there are no more questions, did I open public comment on this item yet? Someone remind me? I did not. Thank you. I would like to open this up to public comment. Again, going to stick with 90 seconds for comments. And with that, I will begin. I see that Tim Mckenzie has his hand raised. So Mr. Mckenzie.
Hi all. I really want to echo what one of the members said earlier about looking at the situation in Mountain View, which is a place that, while the citizens were calling for defunding the police and city council was saying everything is okay, the police were calling in Palo Alto police K9 unit to sick their dog on someone. This is the department that hired someone who was involved in an officer-involved shooting in Sunnyvale and then pulled someone through their car window, and there's now a $10 million lawsuit. But this is not the law enforcement advisory board. I don't think anyone wants to turn this into police bashing. This is the public safety advisory board. And I really hope that there will be a broad view of what public safety is, especially looking through the framework of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where physiological needs need to be addressed before safety needs. That's primary. The community services agency fulfills a lot of those basic needs for our neighbors. Mental health response has been brought up a few months ago. There was 101 was shut down for a day because someone was going to end their life. How frequently does the Caltrain stop? we've had 2 suicide clusters of high school students in the past 2 decades. That I think is a much more big public safety threat than giving more funds to the police department. I hope that you'll look at the needs of our community, what we have, what we need, and find ways to fill those needs and direct resources in the proper directions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mckenzie. The next speaker will be Alex Brown.
All right. Hey, for selfish reasons, I want as many study sessions as you guys can fit in. I feel like there's no such thing as too much information or too deep an analysis. And if you have the opportunity to bring light and clarity to very murky issues that face the residents of Mountain View, I think you should do it. It's folly to make recommendations without context or details. And now is the time to do your due diligence and for Melvin to put together some fun and informative presentations. I know all of you are curious people and want to do good. And I look forward to seeing where you go with this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The next speaker is Ana Marie Morales.
Hi, I just wanted to say I'm very hopeful and encouraged by the conversation that's going on today. And I really want to echo exactly what Tim said. I couldn't have said it better. I also really think what Alex Brown said about having as much outreach as possible to the public, because I know for a fact there are people who are underrepresented and are actually fearful about talking even in this in this space. So I'm hopeful we can reassure them, get outreach and get more people involved in this and lots more feedback, because there are a ton of various opinions and we want to hear, I know I personally want to hear all of those opinions and their personal stories. So I'm really looking forward to everything that's happening and the work plan process, all this different stuff. So thank you to everyone involved here today. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Salim Demerji.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've enjoyed watching this meeting, and I look forward to what you do for public safety in Mountain View. I just wanted to make sure that as you go forward doing outreach for people, that you also keep in mind that a ton of work has already been done on this topic by HRC. And I think it would be really in your interest to look at the stories that they have, the outreach they've already done, as you work in the future, because they've spent I think weeks, if not months, on this exact sort of outreach. So it would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more public speakers? All right, seeing none. We are taking no action on this item today. So if there's no other questions or comments from the PSAB, then we can move on to item 4.4, nomination and election of a board chair. Give me 1 second, please.
I'll second.
I'm in time, sorry. So with moving on to item 4.3, you as a public safety advisory board have the liberty to nominate any member of this body as chair. All 7 of you are eligible to become chair. Your term will run from, it'll be an annual term, running from the date of your initial appointment, which was April 13th of 2021 through April 12th of 2022. As far as process goes, any of you may nominate a person for the position of chair, and if that nomination would need to be seconded by another member. And then all nominations that are seconded will then be voted upon. Following this body selecting a chair, I am going to no longer be facilitating this meeting, and a newly appointed chair will lead us through item 4.5 through item 6. With that said, I would like to answer any questions any of you may have. Joan.
Thank you. I was going to make a nomination. I didn't realize you were asking for questions first.
If no one has any questions, we can move to nominations. Are there no questions? All right, well,
I have a question. I have a question.
Yes.
Can a person nominate more than one person for the same position?
You may nominate more than one person. However, before we vote, that nomination requires another member to make a second of that motion, of that nomination.
Okay.
And you may nominate yourself if you like, but again, it would need to be seconded by another member.
And should we address the board and see who's interested? Or do we just make nominations?
It's possible for you to, you can make a nomination and somebody could say that they're not interested.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
I guess if Joan wants to go, I could make a nomination if Joan wants to go. So you decide who goes, and yeah.
Joan, would you like to make a nomination?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Kavita because she has considerable experience in the issues that we will be discussing, especially over the past year.
Okay, we have a nomination for Kavita. I'm trying to figure out a process for allowing potential other people to why don't we take any additional nominations for this position as well? Or I'm sorry, can we get a second for Kavita?
I'll second it.
Nominated by member Brodowski, seconded by member Langston. Okay. Would anyone else like to make an additional nomination for anyone else to be the board chair?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I was going to nominate two people. One of them's already been nominated. So I now nominate Cleve Frink. I think is the historical component of his father participating in the formation of a public safety advisory board. I don't know, it's nice to see that continuation. I've heard him talk. I feel he's well spoken, and I think he comes at this with a breadth of experience that's very wide and well versed.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second that nomination of Cleve Frink as the board chair?
I will.
Thank you. Would any other members like to nominate anyone else for the position of board chair? Okay, seeing none, we have two members nominated for the position of board chair. We have Kavita Iyer and Cleve Frink. Why don't we just vote? And I'll say first, we'll go with the order of nomination. All in favor of, actually, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Oh, no. All in favor of Kavita Iyer as the board chair, please raise your hand.
I'll vote for myself.
Good.
4. So we have 4 members voting. We have Kavita, Jeanette, Eva, and Joan. And that is 4 of 7. So I'm imagining that those voting for Cleve Frink, I don't know if I need to call, I don't need to call it. We've got the other 3 members, I assume. So with that, you all have just appointed Kavita IR as your chair. Thank you very much. Kavita, as the newly nominated and appointed chair, would you like to take us through the remainder of this meeting, beginning with the election of a vice chair? And then going into item 5 is board staff comments, questions, and reports. And I totally messed up, and I apologize because we've already taken action, but I did not open public comment. So members of the public, please forgive me. I didn't ask you if you wanted to speak. I will do that now. Mr. Mckenzie.
Congratulations, Kavita. I was part of MVPDX cohort 2, which was facilitated by Kavita. She was amazing. And can't think of someone for better hand to do this. Thank you so much, Kavita. Cleve, I don't know you personally. I'm sure you would have done great as well. But I just wanted to say thanks and congratulations, Kavita.
Thank you, Mr. Mckenzie. Next speaker is Alex Brown.
Congratulations, Kavita. You're going to do a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anna Marie Morales.
Hi, congratulations, Kavita. I think you are perfect for this. I'm really excited to see where this goes. And yeah, let's continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. And with that, seeing no more hands for public comment, Kavita, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
I will now leave the facilitating of this meeting to you. And
Okay. Thank you, Melvin. I have many things to learn from you. I haven't really done this kind of thing before for the city, so please bear with me, everyone, as I sort of try to wander my way through this. So item 4.5 is our next item, and that is the nomination election of a board vice chair. So I'd like to open the floor right now for nominations for that position. I see 3 hands up. I'll go in the order that I saw them. Member Langton or Derek, would you like to nominate someone for the position of vice chair?
I'd nominate Cleve Frink for the position of vice chair.
Thank you, Derek. Before I go forward for any other nominations, is there a seconding of that nomination?
Yes, I will second it.
Thank you, Cal. Okay. Are there any other nominations for the position of, board vice chair? Joan.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Derek Langston. I think we need his experience with police work on the in the managing end of things.
Okay, thank you, Joan. Is there a seconding for Derek Langton and the position of board vice chair? Thank you, Cleve. Are there any other nominations for the position of board vice chair before we vote? Okay, I don't see any other hands. Okay, so I'll just go in the order that the nominations happen. All those in favor of Cleve Frink in the position of board vice chair, please raise your hands. Okay, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 votes for Cleve Frink. And then I'm assuming that there's, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't vote. I'm sorry. Do I vote? I vote, Melvin? Yes. Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Bear with me, everyone. Okay. So I'm going to vote for, I'm going to vote for Cleve as well. So 5 votes for Cleve. And so did I count right? That leaves Joan and Eva. I'm assuming your votes go for Derek. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Cleve, welcome to your position as board vice chair. I know I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure the rest of the panel as well. Okay, I believe that closes item 4.5.
Excuse me, you followed my poor example when we forgot to take public comments.
Okay. So public, I welcome your comments at this point. And Melvin, you can see and handle that? Okay.
Yes. So there's Tim Mckenzie and Alex Brown.
Congratulations, Cleve. It'll be great. Looking forward to the work.
Alex Brown. Oh, sorry, I promoted the wrong person.
Yeah, Tim beat me to it. Congratulations, Cleve. It's gonna be a fun time.
We also have Anna Marie Morales. Anna Marie.
Thank you. I just wanted to say congratulations, Cleve. Love to hear more about your experiences and all this stuff, and I think you'll do a great job. So congratulations.
There are no more speakers.
Okay, so that concludes item 4.5. I'm going to move to agenda item 5, which is board staff comments, questions, and board reports. Melvin, do you typically take each of those as an individual item, or is it kind of an open thing for all of these bits?
This is a period where you can call on various different members of the board to provide comments, or staff to provide comments if they have any.
Okay. Could I open it up to the board members at this point for any comments or questions, any proposed agenda items for future meetings? I'm looking for hands raised and I see none right now. Oh, Cleve.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up about my comment earlier about how we should focus on our problems. And there were a couple of comments after about a couple of incidents that have happened in the city. And I just want to be clear that when we talk about these issues, police issues are very complex. And we can't talk about these issues with just headlines. So for instance, the dog issue was just referred to as a headline, but that issue is very complex. And there are a lot of layers to that incident. And we don't do the department or our community a great service when we don't talk about fully all of the pieces of some of these problems. And I feel like that does a disservice to the department, who needs our trust. And I want to make sure that we always provide all of the information so that everybody has all of the context. And that's not to say that our police department won't make mistakes, because they're made up of humans, and so people will make mistakes. But I also want to make sure that we're always being fair to all of the participants in these incidents, so that all of the information is provided and the community has a clear picture of things that happen in the way that they happen. Thank you.
Joan, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I'm looking at this item 5, and then I'm looking at the next item, which is adjournment. And my feeling is that we've had an initial meeting, and we've seen at least 3 issues that we have to deal with sometime in the future, and in the near future, meaning in the next year, which is going to go quickly. And I would ask you, Kavita, to think of homework we all should be doing between now and next meeting. And I think it was Cal, or maybe it was Melvin, who said, let's get all of our ideas down and in a big list. Was it you, Cal?
Yes, that was me.
Yeah, and so maybe one of the things we could do for next time is just to each one prepare a list to throw into the bucket. And I'm hoping you have some other ideas, Kavita.
Oh, I always have ideas, Joan. I don't want to overload the team too quickly. Okay, thank you for that, Joan. You had mentioned, Joan, I'm just gonna double check with while we have you. You might have an item to put on the agenda for next time.
Yes, I had thought of throwing it onto the bucket list next time, but I could mention it now.
Sure.
There was an item reported about a month ago in the Voice, and I think somebody mentioned it tonight. A young man who apparently was dragged out of his car window at 2 in the morning on Castro and is now suing the city. And I understand that's under wraps because it's a suit. However, that's the sort of thing I think this board should be looking at. And I don't know how to propose it or even to know if it's correct. And so I would ask either all of us or you to look at that and find out what we might be able to see, and or is it under our purview, or is this something that isn't?
Okay, thank you for that. Cal, I see your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Kavita. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to the gavel. Anyways, I want to echo what Cleve had said, and Cleve, congratulations to you too. That what we need to do is to do proper due diligence in line with what Joan just said. To just don't follow the headlines. Let's get the grasp of what the meat is, because without that, we would be doing a disservice not only to the community but to ourselves as a PSAP. So that's one thing I really want us to do is take a look thoroughly at every issue. And then as the other thing I would really like is, as a chair, I had one thing I did was talking to Chief Vermeer years ago, that when you see a kid, especially teenage boys, they see a police officer, they run the other way. And now the police officers thinking, why are they running, right? My kids, 3 boys, has happened to them, but they didn't know what it was, so they ran. One boy ran, everyone ran, and then a couple of cars came by. But I told him, why not have sheer manners? Sometimes previously years ago they did. Do the beat. I don't know how the budget's at. Walk the streets. Say hello, good morning. Just simple things like that. And for a little while that worked, but after that I don't know what happened, changes, and I've not seen as many police officers unless there's something going on in Castro Street. So that's one of the line item work plans I would like to see back on the table. But again, like Joan said, we'll just write it all down and we'll bring it next time. But as for the agenda for next time, I think one of the important things is the SRO. We should address that, not because the city council kind of wants, they got a deadline. We were thinking about this, I know individually, I was at least, that's an issue we have to address and see what we can come up as advice for the city council and the PD. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Jeanette?
Hi, yes, I just want to say I'm really excited to work with you all on this. And also in terms of SROs, I know we aren't taking any action right now, but I think it should be considered that if we want to kind of have a comprehensive idea of what students think of SROs, having this year's students before graduation would be really valuable, because next year, the people on campus who have been there for longest would have only been there for 1.5 years because of online school. So I think they would be lacking experience, like real life experience with SROs. So then if we try to gather opinion then by the next school year, it would be a lot more of what people think they think about SROs rather than them based on their real life experiences. So I think trying to get this class, who has at least been on campus for 2.5 years, to kind of give their opinion on that.
Jeanette, before I let you go, is there a way you see that happening? Because I realize the school year, there's really not much time left. Is it something you could foresee happening over the summer, or does it need to happen before school gets out?
I think a way that we could get a lot of opinion is normally at the end of the school year, they send out surveys to the students, and they're required pretty much, like they require your English classes to kind of make sure you do it. And a lot of the time it's about like a variety of topics. Last time it was about like bell schedules or drugs. So I think, and it's anonymous, so I think people feel a lot safer kind of filling those out. So maybe if we could work with maybe like the school board or the high school, because I think it's just Mountain View High School, to kind of send out a survey and make sure that it's anonymous, and kind of ask them to carry that survey out and have people fill it out. And people are used to doing that at the end of the year as well.
Okay, thank you for that idea. Cleve, thank you for being patient. You had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, well, when we're talking about SROs, a couple of things that we have to remember is that the SRO program is a resource for under-resourced kids. And these kids don't just meet SROs at high school, they start working with them in elementary school. So most kids in our city have had a relationship with an SRO of one name or another throughout most of their history in this district. So it's important to remember that. It's also important to remember that it's a resource for those kids who are under-resourced. So a lot of folks are saying that this is a program that isn't needed, and those folks are not the subject of the work that SROs do. And it's good to want to revise things. But if you take away a resource from a group that needs that resource, and as a youth basketball coach, I firmly believe this is a needed resource, you must have a backfill for that. And so that has to be part of the conversation if you want to discuss something else. And I think it's important to remember that. And it's also important to remember that the SROs don't just do just the school component. They also do a lot of the youth services and youth recreation programs that the police department runs. They're tied up into that as well. And there's a lot of success in the work that those teams do. And so we also need to consider the body of work that comes with the SROs.
Thanks, Cleve. Derek, I noticed your hands up.
Yeah, as far as I have a little bit on the SRO kind of thing, I do agree. It's nice to get the perspective of the kids that are being impacted by them, or at least their feeling about them, even though they might not have engaged with them. But I will say they're kind of a unique role in that they're serving, this role model function and kind of like a counselor, but they also are there as a law enforcement presence, which when you want it and they're not there, you'll miss it. And the duality of their role is something that's just very unique. And if you have an officer that actually can do an enforcement presence, but also be, an open ear for the students in general, and potentially even a recruiting opportunity for Mountain View Police Department by, modeling what a police officer does and how they can impact the community. So that's just my somewhat, but I do think the kids, we should, talk to some kids and that are affected by them, and hopefully hear from some that actually have engaged with the resource officers directly, but also ones that just might have a standoffish opinion and are scared of them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Through the chair, sorry. Could I just offer while my child is crying? Sorry. This is not a agendized item, so I would just recommend that we figure out what we'd like to discuss and add this to the agenda as opposed to having substantive conversation on this topic right now.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Melvin. Okay, Cal, you have your hand up?
Actually, no, thank you, Melvin. He's kind of answered it, and it's good. We'll just agendize it for next time. And I can ask the question then. Thank you.
Okay. Cleve, is your hand still up?
Yeah, one last thing. Just to everybody, I've gotten a chance to know Kavita through this year, and you guys are so lucky to have her as your chair. She's an incredibly special and intelligent and amazing person and a community organizer, and we are very, very blessed to have her.
Cleve, I'm blushing. Stop. And you can't tell, but I am. Oh my goodness. All right, be still my heart. Okay. Does anyone else have any items for the agenda for next week? Or next month, pardon me. Okay. Melvin, I have a question.
Actually, Kavita, excuse me, Derek's hand is up.
I'm sorry, Derek. I didn't see it there. It was somehow it's not. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, please go ahead.
Just one more quick thing. I posted a link in the chat if people have the time to read it, but I'll send it to Melvin. Basically about a study in Massachusetts where they stopped prosecuting low-level and misdemeanor crimes, and they had some success in the recidivism rate. I think it might be an interesting topic. Just as far as the decisions to prosecute low-level offenders and what impact that may have.
Thanks, Derek. So Melvin, I have a question. It seems like the SRO topic is both time sensitive and of great interest to both the public and the board members. My question is, how would we go about getting kind of a baseline of information about the program and some basic questions answered? Is that something that staff is able to do before the next meeting? I don't know what your workload looks like.
That is something that we would prioritize as something that is important to the council and to this body. We would find a way to at least make a informational item come forward where we're able to present that.
Okay.
And the staff liaisons, Captain Campo and I will meet with you and Cleve to set the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Flush that out in our meeting.
Okay, that sounds good, because I think it would be helpful to have a baseline of information. So we're dealing with those facts as we then talk about our opinions based on those facts. I think that would be helpful. Okay, do I need to open this section, Melvin, to public comment?
No.
Okay, yeah, it might be dangerous. We know who's out there. Okay, all right. Oh, am I not allowed to make jokes if I'm the chairperson? Okay, sorry. So is there anything else before we call for an adjournment? Do I call for adjournment? Do I have to be, does it have to be seconded? Do we all need to just get out of here?
You can adjourn the meeting.
Oh, I need a gavel.
I read in Robert's that adjournment has to be seconded. Is that not?
Does anyone else want to get out of here? No. Just
one last thing, Kavita. Actually, yes. I just put my hand up. I would really recommend that all members, when you get a chance, go out, talk to the public. One problem we had in the early days of the HRC was that we met once every 2 months, and when you told people you're the HRC, they said, "Can I get a job with the city?" They did not know what HRC means. This is a little different. It's Public Safety Advisory Board, so do it cautiously, I would say, because it will get some tempers up. But if you can reach out and do it, and that's something I'll propose in the work plan too. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I look forward to working with all of you, and please have a safe and enjoyable, peaceful Memorial Day weekend. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey.
Good night, everyone.